Well, kind of hit the table there. Squeaky chair aside, I got the chest piece done, and I think it came out pretty well, all things considered. I have to have a back piece. I don't know how well I can show it, but yeah, there's a back piece as well. Um, being my first attempt, I think it came out pretty well. Like I just said, all things considered. Only thing I would improve on is measurement of the leather straps because they kind of bulge up here, but everything else, it fits well. I'm going to be putting up some images that are kind of scroll through as I'm talking. But my dad took a few pictures of me kind of posing for the camera with the rest of my kit on. And during that, I was able to do a bit of a mobility test. So I'm able to still bend over and twist and all these other things, walk around. And obviously, sitting down is not too hard. Getting up's not too hard, you know. Actually, let me do a quick, full test of that. Yeah, really, not much loss of mobility because it cuts off a little above the waistline. So, pretty good. And then the shoulders, I'm able to bend in easily across my shoulders. So, locking and stuff, swinging isn't impeded. I think it came out pretty well. Um, you're going to see in those photos, I have the buckler covering my one arm that way. As I'm posing with the spear, kind of protects the upper arm. And yeah, that about does it. So with that, I can, in totality, say that the LARP kit is pretty much done. I might tinker with a few things, reinforce a few things, some connection points, but pretty much done for the foreseeable future. I cannot speak. Um, what else? There's not much to add. The spear, shield, and the bat I bought from Gorg the blacksmith. Pretty good quality stuff. I got a gift card the past Christmas for all that, so that's used it on those three things. And what else? That's about it. But now, going into more detail. So I'm obviously wearing gambeson, chainmail, and plate. So we got many layers of protection. And let's see. I might have to redo some of the painting because it's coming off still for some reason. The silver is like smearing off, and I don't know why. Because I put on this paint layer as like a protective coating, when I was done polishing and all this other stuff. And I don't know if it's because maybe some of the residual polish is on there, interfering with the curing drying process. But it's like I worked on this for hours, taking off any residual polish material and any oil. But who knows? Anyway, so making this, I had a leather bag basically full of sand, or leather shot bag, some may call it. Had that, placed it on the anvil, and basically I had a hammer, either a ball peen hammer or I think it's called an engineer's hammer. It has like a pointy end and the blunt end. You can use that, use the pointy end, of course, hit that along the seam that you want to bend in the middle. Basically, I had the plate sitting on the bag and it's hitting it like that, you know. So it had enough give to slowly bend the plate. I did that in combination with putting it in the grip, the vise on my workbench and bending it that way. Um, that's all for shaping. Once the shaping was done, some of the bumps are still visible on this. I tried planishing and beating that back even, so flipping it onto this side and hitting this. Once that was done for both of them, I did hit it with a little bit of the tiger paw. It's a sandpaper pad for the angle grinders. So I did a couple passes on that to try and smooth out what little bit was left. From there, I took multiple grades of sandpaper, progressively getting finer and finer. Took that and some polishing liquid or WD-40. You know, I use both, but I used those, and by hand, I just did nice, wide, slow motions of taking off whatever was, left behind, giving it a nice, shiny finish, finally hitting it with a cloth several times to try and get any residual stuff off. Once that was finished, that's when I tried putting the paint on. And like I said, some of it is still coming off for some reason. The slots, these are about 1 inch. I would actually say go a bit wider than your actual leather. So if you have like a 1 inch strap, go 1 1/4 or 1 1/2. That way you have a little bit of wiggle room and it's easier to get in on the actual slots. I cut 2 of them per location. So 1, 2, and on the sides, same thing, right? That way they're a bit more wrapped around the plate, and so the pressure's going this way instead of a very narrow, it's less likely to tear the leather strips. Right? So you're basically going from a very narrow location to basically spreading it out, so that the pressure's here instead of like that. From there, I have a rotary hand punch, and I basically just punched in multiple holes. Right, you can see that. Punched in multiple holes, and I have this nice little wax-covered cord, right, that I used as my thread. I would still recommend, if you use this type of thing, to maybe stiffen up the edges, that your leading edge, with a bit of glue. It makes getting through all the holes, especially if you have rather small ones punched, makes it easier to get through. But basically, I would have the underside, right? And I would have the 2 edges meeting. Well, my other scrap. The 2 edges meeting on top. And then I would just, all through there, have the holes punched and the thread threaded, sewn, whatever word you want to use. And then I got some buckles. Just, you can get any basic buckles from Hobby Lobby or a craft section, a craft store. Make sure they match the width, at least close enough, match the width of the strips that you've cut out. And then again, use the same rotary punch to put your holes along the center line so that you can actually use said buckles. I'll try to get those right here. So those work pretty well. The other side, I don't have any buckles. This is just straight attached to the plate. That way, I can basically slide it on like that, and then just have to do those two. Simple. The only problem with it is I've noticed that like the edge, even though I rounded the edges of these plates, it's just the nature of the material, so I'm gonna have to deal with it. Is that if I'm bending, right, the chainmail might like to kind of kink up and create a lip that the plate catches on. And so I have to kind of shake it loose as I'm putting it on and do a little uh, dance in order to actually put the plate on. But that's just, there's nothing I can really change about that, honestly. Because I've already rounded and ground down the edges as much as I can without actually, damaging or completely changing the dimension of the plate. So, what can you do? I mean, unless I want to put leather around all the edges of this, but it's not really worth it. That's about it, actually. That is everything. Got the shaping, the painting, the sanding, the cutting. The cutting. This front plate, I simply just used an angle grinder, cutting wheel, and then slowly for the curves used a grinding wheel to get to where I wanted. Um, the back plate though, I got to test out my 50, yes, 50 amp plasma cutter. I got to test that out. Works pretty well. I turned it all the way down because this is only 16 gauge sheet metal. But I turned that down, because it's a thinner material, and it still went right through this, which is good, which is good. I just now know I need to get some better hoses and attachments, then get better ones that than what was provided in the box. You know what I mean? Because with the plasma cutter, they give you like the bare bones necessities, and it's like, I'll go out and get some better ones, that don't leak as much, despite no amount of Teflon tape is gonna save that. So, but hey, it's a learning experience, and overall, it still works. So, hey, can't complain too much about that. And also, speaking on this material, just doing research, it's like, oh yeah, 16 gauge, it's pretty good for LARP, 18 to 16 is pretty good. Maybe even 14 if you want something real heavy. But for things like HEMA or Buhurt, I don't know how to pronounce it still, Buhurt, the real like full contact metal weapons and stuff. This is basically paper. They're using like 11 gauge, which is some of the stuff that is used in the shop to build frames. Like 11 gauge tubular, square tubes. Wow. Yeah. I know I'm not going to be doing that anytime soon. I think I might just stick to LARP. um, which is another thing, which kind of goes into the weapons. They use all those actual metal weapons, of course, all blunted. But for LARP, it's all foam weapons, and I've realized foam weapons just elude me. I spent so much time trying to make a foam hammer, and I made it to where, yeah, I hit myself with it. I can't feel any solid core, nothing. I bring it to get tested. This is months ago, so I really don't care anymore. But months ago, and they snapped the head clean off within like 30 seconds. And I'm just standing there like, okay, I guess that's a thing. Back to the drawing board. And I just still haven't figured it out. It's odd that it's easier to make an actual like steel weapon than it is to make a foam weapon. Or at least a foam weapon that is meant to hit, because I made the pyramid head sword, and sure, you could say, oh, hey, that can hit someone. And it's like, yeah, but it's going to hurt, dummy. you know? I mean, like an actual sparring foam weapon that's meant to take an impact upon itself, but also deliver an impact to a person without hurting said person. It's just a fine balancing act between impact forces and structural integrity. One that I have not found. A balance I have not been able to find. So I might just, for the time being, stick to armor and big foam props that aren't actually meant to, hit people. I mean, like just yesterday, I found my 5mm roll, thankfully. That's money I don't have to spend yet. And I'm going to use that to make the gas masks box for the Deathcore of Krieg. So simple stuff like that I'm probably going to stick to when it comes to foam. Other than the Godzilla suit. That's a long-term goal. We're going to take it slowly and methodically. Especially since it's a whole different kind of foam. It's apparently upholstery foam. Because I asked, of all people, the furries. What do they use to make their costumes and shit? And it's upholstery foam. So yeah, that's going to do it before I keep going on a random tangent, because it's almost, 11 o'clock at night, and I am tired. I do thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Hope you all have had a good week, getting ready for the weekend, and I do hope to catch you in the next one. Good night, and peace.